I am here in the wilderness alone. Invisible monsters that kill you when you look at them have taken over the earth. Invisible monsters that are totally not the plants from the happening. The only hope for survival is Bird Box. Bird Box lets me know when the invisible monsters are around. And I also have this blindfold, so I can't see the invisible monsters, so they won't make me kill myself. But that begs the question, if Bird Box lets me know when the monsters are around, then what's the point of wearing this blindfold, given the fact that Bird Box is an early warning detection system? And also, what is the point of Bird Box if I have this blindfold to prevent me from seeing the monsters? Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Live in the moment. Live in the moment. Bird Box challenge. Bird Box challenge. Bird Box challenge. Bird Box. Let me know if I'm safe. Bird Box. Are there any monsters around? Bird Box. We're good? I trust you, Bird Box. You're the only way for me to achieve safety. Let's continue going through this wildness. Thank you, Bird Box.
As I wander this post-apocalyptic abyss, I wonder, what is the meaning of life? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a bird parent? Because it is not just my life that I hold in my hands. It is also the life of Bird Box. Bird Box watches over me. The future is Bird Box. The past is Bird Box. The present is Bird Box. Bird Box is the only means of hope. Bird Box is the light. For in this darkness, Bird Box will find me and lead me towards the light.
What's that, Bird Box? You said so? Oh my God! The monsters! They're here? They're shaking the tree? They're gonna come get me! But if they're shaking the tree, that means they can interact with the physical world. And that must mean they should be able to take off the blindfold. Bird Box, what are you saying? You like a quiet place better? Yeah, me too.
You gotta love to be gone back yet. Love turns into happy, don't you grab it.
So, it's been all over social media, people doing the Bird Box challenge. Bird Box is the most successful movie ever to premiere on Netflix. Numerous accidents caused by the Bird Box challenge. Over 45 million people watched Bird Box. Netflix discourages people from doing the Bird Box challenge. If Bird Box was released in theaters, it'd make over $450 million. OMG, Bird Box is so great. And being one of the few people on the internet who dabbles in media criticism and actually owns his own personal Bird Box, it was high time for me to chime in on the phenomena, plus some other greater trends I've been noticing with a lot of Netflix programming. So Bird Box is one of those movies that managed to keep me engaged while I was watching it, but the more time I had to reflect back on it, the more I came to hate it. It starts off interestingly enough. We've got a multiple timelines framing device, and I think instinctively as humans, we're all suckers for the apocalyptic, all is lost, chaos in the street scenes in horror movies. I love that shit. The best movie of all time for me would just be 2 hours of chaos in the streets, intercut with montages of talking head news reporters, covering it all to give it that cinema verite realism. I could just watch that forever. Apparently, I'm not in the minority either. Collectively, as an audience, we love seeing these all is lost, collapse of civilization montages. We love them because they're scary but relatable fantasy. We love to fantasize about what happens once the invisible barriers of civilization are gone, and what will we do to survive? How will we persevere in a new world where all of the artificial boundaries of civilization and the old world economy are wiped away? It's the fantasy that has allowed The Walking Dead to trudge on for over 100 episodes and 9 seasons. It's scary, and it's fun to imagine a tabula rasa reset that puts everyone back on a level playing field, despite the fact that the fantasy would roll old pretty quickly once most people realized that they wouldn't have active plumbing, would be stuck squatting in the woods to poop. But hey, if those squatty potty ads are to believe, that's the way to go. So from a sheer entertainment and engagement perspective, Bird Box has all the elements to keep you hooked. The opening chaos of hospitals going berserk and people running in streets and people huddling in houses listening to the news is gripping enough to make you want to learn the rules of this universe, plus the ticking time clock of Sandra Bullock's pregnancy adds another level of danger, especially in the present where she has 2 kids to supervise in the post-apocalypse, who she needs to teach how to navigate the world without sight, lest they be killed by the invisible boogeyman. There's a term that currently ostracized screenwriter Max Landis used to describe what he does to make his scripts compelling for readers, and it's something he calls layering them with cookies. For him, cookies are details and clues that make the reader feel smart for paying attention to them, or catching them. They're little series of small little Chekhov's guns, little setups that come with a set payoff. For example, take Luke's force training scene in Dagobah, where he fights Vader only to see that it's his face behind the mask, which foreshadows the later revelation that Vader is his father. Bird Box is littered with cookies designed to make the audience feel smart. The framing device of a non-linear narrative makes viewers feel interested in seeing what happens to the cast of survivors when we see in the present that Sandra Bullock is alone hunkering down in a boat with her 2 kids. Connecting the details about these 2 kids and if they're both hers is another element that keeps the audience engaged. All of these little details give you the illusion of making you feel smart as the pieces come together. And the whole time, Bird Box tiptoes on the side of being edgy and transgressive by slowly revealing that the 2 kids are not biologically Sandra Bullock's, and she has a clear preference for boy over girl since boy is her kid, and it's implied that she'd gladly sacrifice the other child for the safety of her own progeny. And the fact that she just calls them boy and girl is another edgy tool to show us how truly messed up this hopeless world is. And it's all entertaining in the moment, but begins to unravel the minute you start to think about it for too long. Now, I'm not a particular fan of the CinemaSins school of criticism in terms of finding nitpicky plot holes. I feel like that is the most shallow form of criticism possible, and I can forgive a lot. Like, for example, take the geography in the T-Rex attack from the original Jurassic Park. It makes no sense. The T-Rex comes out of its pen, then pushes the car over a ledge, which begs the question that if there's a huge drop in the T-Rex enclosure, how the hell did it manage to get out in the first place? But because the scene is so well shot and so gripping, you honestly don't care. It just doesn't matter because nobody's better at directing action and suspense than Spielberg on a good day. The entire scene is a masterpiece in terms of escalating suspense and larger consequences, so the logistical fallacies don't really matter at all. But there's nothing in Bird Box remotely on that level, and the rules it sets up start to become more and more inconsistent. Like, for example, why are the monsters not able to get indoors? Why is the interior of a supermarket or house safer than outdoors? Assuming the monsters are everywhere at all times, why wouldn't they just be hovering around indoors? Also, what's keeping them from getting indoors? We see that they can interact with physical objects on some level. Why can't they just fly down a chimney, break a window, or even open a door? The restrictions just feel arbitrary. And what is the point of the Bird Box? It doesn't scare them away, and if knowing where they are is useless, especially if you're just going to keep yourself blindfolded whenever you're outside, why even have a Bird Box? It's just a stupid device that isn't used in any meaningful way to build suspense. There's a movie that's kind of similar to Bird Box from a few years back, and no, I'm not talking about A Quiet Place, but we'll get to that. The movie was called The Darkest Hour, and also featured invisible alien monsters that kill people in Russia. And I'd say The Darkest Hour isn't a good movie by any stretch, but at the very least, it has a few set pieces and better, more consistent rule set for how its monsters work in terms of using electricity to determine where they are. The monsters have a better, clearer motivation and feel more like characters versus the pretentious, manifest your darkest fears creatures seen in Bird Box, which honestly feel like a very lazy, pretentious waste of time. And don't give me that whole, what you don't see is scarier than what you do see. If I'm going to waste my time on a mystery that's driven by a monster, then goddammit, you better show me the damn monster. There's a British movie, also on Netflix, that I like quite a bit called The Ritual. It's sort of a Blair Witch Project riff about a bunch of guys who go into the woods, but then they get involved into some supernatural shenanigans. But unlike the Blair Witch, there is also a really cool monster that is behind it all, and as you learn about the creature and the lore behind it, it starts to feel like a great payoff for all the time you invested, as you learn how it works, and that it is legitimately one of the best monster designs I've seen in years. M. Night proved that even with all of his Hitchcockian pretensions, he couldn't make wind blowing through the leaves scary in the happening, and Bird Box doesn't really do much better to make it feel terrifying either. It just feels dumb, because we know the creatures can't take the blindfold off Sandra Bullock for whatever stupid reason, so in the final scene where she's begging for sanctuary despite the pulsating soundtrack, what is it that we're exactly supposed to be afraid of? Now, we have a version of this movie that I legitimately love, and that, of course, is A Quiet Place. Now, what makes Bird Box and A Quiet Place similar is that they're both basically lowbrow monster movies with a highbrow degree of filmmaking polish. Both of these could be featured on the Sci-Fi Channel as an original movie made for next to no money. They both have similar themes about the importance of sacrifice for parenthood, but A Quiet Place does a far better job in terms of building its universe, showing us the unique ways its family has evolved their habits and customs to live in this new world while establishing the rules and limits of their universe, very concisely. We learn very quickly how lethal the monsters are and how dangerous any sound can be, and that the monsters are always lurking close by. We even learn that there are 3 of them, and they have been sighted in the area, and the film very economically delves out all this information just from pure filmmaking showmanship without the need for any clumsy voiceover or exposition. And it remains largely dialogue-free, except for the scenes of sign language. And while I say the monster design is a bit derivative of trends we've seen with gray aliens like the Cloverfield monster, I think it serves its purpose in creating a very tense set pieces like the Emily Blunt giving birth scene, which is much more effective than the same scene from Bird Box. Bird Box is the pretensions of being edgy by showing us old women stabbing themselves in the neck or people walking into fire cars to be burned alive. But easily the edgiest, most transgressive thing that Bird Box offers is the looming threat that Sandra Bullock might willingly sacrifice Girl when going down the river because she loves Boy more because he's her biological son. I was enthralled up to this point because this felt like the ultimate transgressive edge. But of course the film doesn't go all the way, despite trying to sell the audiences that they're seeing some sort of transgressive piece of horror because, oh my god, Sandra Bullock doesn't even name her children, and just calls them Boy and Girl. That's so fucked up. The film doesn't go all the way compared to something truly transgressive like Hereditary with its shocking death scene, and for those of you who haven't seen Hereditary, I won't spoil it for you, but for those of you who have, you know what I'm talking about. If you're going to promise to show us something messed up and transgressive, then go all the way. Don't pussyfoot around it for the bullshit Hollywood safe ending. And it was at that point that my mild bemusement transformed into frustration, then into disgust. But Bird Box remains an interesting point in this new frontier of digital media. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend checking out my magnum opus 40-minute piece on the state of new media, since it covers a broad overview about where we are right now. But for a second, let's take a look at Netflix and a larger trend I've been noticing. While Netflix has released and premiered a lot of great movies and TV shows from great creators and a few not so great creators, there's an interesting paradox. I'd say no one has really figured out what the proper method is for creating TV in this new streaming cultural paradigm. TV in the world of old was designed around ad breaks, quickly digestible 7 to 8 minute chunks designed to be perfectly timed around commercial cliffhangers to keep audiences engaged until the finish of their runtime. But in some cases, the restrictions of what you could put past the TV censor and the limits on how much content you could fit between commercials served as a good creative restriction. TV series like Lost are perfectly balanced in terms of featuring dramatic cliffhanging reveals that are all perfectly timed to coincide with the ad breaks. The fact that TV has been based around this for half a century has made many writers especially good at creating stories built around these restrictions. There's a great documentary film that explores the relationship between art and restriction, and that is Lars von Trier's documentary The Five Obstructions, where he challenged a filmmaking friend, Jorgen Lith, to remake his short film The Perfect Human 5 different times, each time with a different restriction. The worst version of it came when the director was faced with no limitations whatsoever, but each time when he was given a new limitation, the act of overcoming it made a new version of art. Restrictions and limitations can sometimes produce magic, and that was the sort of point of the entire exercise, to document the process of limitations and restrictions spurring creativity. You can see it in things like Jaws, where the limitations of the mechanical shark led Steven Spielberg to mostly keep it underwater, to the film's greater benefit. But in the new streaming culture where there are no limits, a TV show doesn't have to be 22 minutes or 44 minutes, it can be 50 minutes, it can be 2 hours, it can be a choose-your-own-adventure story like Black Mirror's Bandersnatch, it can also be a feature-length movie like BBC's Sherlock. But when there are no rules, no consistency, when everyone is just following something that feels like the past with no boundaries, it also becomes very formless. There are a lot of Netflix streaming shows that have tons and tons of dead weight. Just big scenes where 2 characters sit in a room and talk and talk and talk. In the better realms of prestige television like The Sopranos, this talk is often illuminating. It serves as a great mechanism to develop character, let people reveal what their perceived version of themselves is compared to who they really are. Like, for example, take Tony's sister Janice. We see how she presents herself as an emotionally rich and cultured, worldly woman who cares deeply about her family, but in the scenes where she's alone, we can see how greedy and manipulative and exploitive she is. Compare that to the scene with Foggy Nelson and Karen Page sitting around having coffee talking about this city to drag out the runtime before Daredevil gets into another hallway fight scene. Or another 40-minute episode where Claire Temple has to administer medical treatment between incredibly dull and tedious exposition. It becomes apparent what is real prestige television and what's trying to give the faux illusion of prestige television. Not to say that all Netflix shows are like this, but there are more than a few that don't really know what to do with all their extended narrative runtime and have a lot of unneeded narrative bloat. And you get things like the first season of Stranger Things, where Joyce Barnes is screaming about finding Will, then her estranged husband comes into the picture to literally plot block her and drag out the Find Will plot thread for another 90 minutes so he can hit that 8-episode mark. We've seen it in Netflix series, which are kind of like diet prestige television, and we see it in movies, which are kind of like diet blockbusters. We saw it last year with Bright, which was successful for the platform, even if Max Landis went as far as largely disowning it. It had the illusion of looking like a major Hollywood release, at least when looking at it at a glance. But when you watch it and pay attention, the limits of the $45 million that were spent on it become readily apparent in what felt like something that was kind of cheap and low budget, with the biggest special effect being the fact that Will Smith was convinced to be in a Netflix movie at all. But it served its purpose in terms of giving the illusion of being a high-concept piece of genre filmmaking, and while most critics despised it, the audiences generally seemed to like it. And in 2018, we have Bird Box, a narratively disjointed, high-concept, low-budget horror movie featuring A-list actress Sandra Bullock being the central focus of what would be a middling horror movie that would not do well in theaters. But because it's on Netflix, and over 100 million people have Netflix, all they have to do is click a button on a TV, phone, computer, or video game console. They can check it out without the bigger motivation they need to go out in theaters to buy a ticket. Unless you have a generally mediocre movie becoming a big viral smash due to it being strung out long enough with enough shocking and edgy moments to keep people engaged enough to hit the end credits. But this is not a movie that will last in the cultural consciousness longer than a month. Hell, by the time you watch this video, I'm sure it'll be next to dead. But that's a larger problem. Netflix has invested money into getting first-run releases of theatrical-looking movies like The Cloverfield Paradox, but the stigma of being a dumping ground for big movie flops will only go so far before the larger brand integrity of Netflix itself begins to erode away. Netflix seems to be aware of this, as well, given the fact that they refused to purchase Sony's Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly bomb, Holmes & Watson. As fun as the idea of having theatrical quality releases debut first on the platform, if the audience begins to realize that basically the studios are only giving them their stinkers in an attempt to recoup their lost production cost, then this gimmick isn't something that's going to last. Not to say that the first run Netflix movies have all been garbage. Both The Ballad of Buster Scruggs and Roma have been received a great amount of critical praise and have come from the cream of the crop in terms of directing talent with the Coen brothers and Alfonso Cuarón respectively. But these films were released with little fanfare, and the nature of the Netflix all-you-can-eat buffet model of releasing shows all at once means that the conversation tends to die out pretty quickly once a fanbase makes their way through the bingeable moments, but all the time wasted between those falls from memory. I can't think of a single Netflix series that received the same amount of attention that The Sopranos got when it was airing, with the entire newspapers releasing weekly columns breaking down the symbolism and dissecting the meaning of each individual episode. Even something as beloved as Stranger Things seems to quickly fade from memory the week after its debut. But that's a larger question. And in the digital age, what should even constitute a TV show? Is it just a 4-hour movie broken up into separate parts? Is it something that resembles the traditional model of a standard 22-minute series? But the one thing I can say for sure is that if these movies don't move past simply evoking nostalgia of better films and TV shows, then ultimately these empty calories will begin to catch up with Netflix as a whole. Bird Box homages or rips off many different horror movies like A Quiet Place, The Mist, The Happening, and just about every major apocalyptic movie from the past 10 years, to make you feel like you're eating a quality meal. But ultimately it's just a casserole made from the reheated Thanksgiving leftovers. And ultimately, the public's appetite for eating casseroles will only go so far before they want to eat something more substantial. But hey, if there's one benefit to Bird Box, it's the easiest cosplay costume in the world, and with con season right around the corner, there's nothing easier than throwing on a jacket and blindfold and getting your own Bird Box, just like the one Captain Crunch uses, and running around on a con floor. In fact, one of the earliest big cons coming up is Wizard World Portland, that'll be running from February 22nd to the 24th. Wish I could go there, but I'm stuck here dealing with my broken passenger side window, which I broke while driving into a Sonic drive-in booth with my fat car while trying to get a $2 ice cream sandwich to alleviate my depression after interviewing for an Audible customer service position for the second time in 2 years, which I was rejected from yet again. Because that's what the real YouTuber lifestyle is. It's not lounging around in a big-ass house with a pool like a glamorous personality vlogger. It's struggling to find basic entry-level work, which is next to impossible because 80% of most college degrees are next to worthless, and the only pleasure in life is to go to cons so you can at least be around people who are living the dream of having a nerdy career that pays them a living wage. But I can't get that because I have to spend $500 repairing this stupid mirror. But you can get a 10% discount on your tickets by using the code LOBSTER at checkout. Use it on your ticket. Enjoy the fantasy that I can't. Go meet Aquaman because apparently he's gonna be there and I can't meet Aquaman. I have to stay here and be miserable and fix my goddamn passenger side mirror. So use the code LOBSTER and enjoy Wizard World Con in Portland with your 10% discount while I slum it around in my shitty warehouse job looking to scrap up enough cash to fix my passenger side mirror, and this code will work on Wizard World Cleveland as well if you can't make it to Portland. And a special thank you to Tim for filming the live action segments. Give him a follow on his Twitch channel, link in the description below. Give him a follow to appreciate him for all of his hard work and help him go pro MLG. And let me know if you like the live action segment in the beginning. It's something I want to do more of thanks to Tim and his equipment. So if you really like it, I have plenty more ideas and you'll see a lot of great stuff in the future. So let me know with your feedback in the comments below. So thank you for watching this video and hearing my thoughts on Bird Box. And remember, lobsters and antennas, but don't you grab it.